Alright, so we'll continue where we left off. Siman Tzadik Beis, the very beginning. We did the Sif Aleph, we'll continue on to Sif Beis, but just a quick review of what is going on. It's a slightly, I would say, difficult Siman. There are quite a few details, quite a few shitas, and the Mechaber is not always very, very clear about the various shitas. In other words, even though he quotes the Rambam, and many times the Rambam is basically quoting the Gemara, it's a little bit unclear, since he may say something a little bit different in Hilchos Taaruvot, and we would think that he would hold the same, as far as if the halachas were the same, that he would have the same position here as he does there. But sometimes there appears to be some discrepancies, and that is why we have, a Shach and a Taz and other Meforshim trying to figure out what exactly the Mechaber, how he holds. So we're going to have to go through a few Nekudas that are mentioned in Hilchos Taaruvot, which we covered again, but that's okay. It's good to refresh our memory a little bit. So what we've done so far is discuss what happens when milk gets mixed with meat in the middle of a process of cooking. Pretty much what's going on in the beginning of Tzadik Beis is cooking. There's a pot cooking on the fire. We're not talking about sli. We're not talking about kovush. We're not talking about tator govar. We're talking about real bishul, heat. And when we say bishul, we're talking about not only heat, we're talking about liquid. And the liquid here is a very important detail in the first few seifim, because we're going to see it's going to make a big difference, this liquid. Liquid is the troublemaker. It is what causes tam to spread. And we said that here, in Basar bechalv, as opposed to just plain nevela, plain tam of nevela, what we have here is two kinds of tamim. We have the tam de basar in the chalav, which is a problem, of course. Basar bechalv, you can't have. And you have another kind of tam, which is even more complicated, and that is the tam ha'chalav shene'esar b'basar. Right? You have milk going into this piece of meat as a result of this fire, as a result of the heat, and coming back out. And when it comes back out, it's a treif milk. And the difference between the tam ha'basar and the tam ha'chalav is that the tam ha'basar you can get away with if you have a kafela. If you have a goy that can tell you, I don't taste any meat in here. The milk is pure milk. Go ahead and have it, no problem. And the Mechaber relies on that, and the Ramah does not. So basically, you have one chiluk here between the Mechaber and the Ramah, which we saw in Taaruvot 2, that the Ramah doesn't want to be soymech on the kafela for a variety of reasons. Not necessarily because of ne'emanos, which is a problem always by goyim, but to be soymech on the tam is also an issue. Does he taste it? Does he not taste it? We just don't use this method of going by taste. The Mechaber obviously says it's okay. It's not a problem, especially if we're talking about a kafela who knows about tam. But he doesn't use the word kafela. Instead, it appears to be from here in Hilchos Taaruvot that he's relying on a goy who's mesiach lefi tumoy. So it was more of a question of nemanos. In other words, does a goy have nemanos or not? Can we rely on him? Usually in Dvar Torah, the goy doesn't have any neman, no edus. So we explained the various shitas on how we allow it, but the basic explanation of nevertheless relying on a goy, despite the fact that it's a problem nemanos, is that it's David Milsa David legluye. We're going to eventually figure it out. A goy will not lie. Or if you say it's a kafela, will not be shaka, will not want to lose his job, his reputation, especially when you will be able to figure it out anyway yourself after you have it. So it's a milsa davida legluye. It's not a real nemon. It's not a real edus. It's a gilui milsa, as we explained. It's revealing a fact which can be figured out later on. So therefore, apparently,
he knows he'll get caught.
He knows he'll get caught. So we can use it over here. Okay. So that was one chiluk, legabe the tam ha'basar, if there's any tam ha'basar in the cholov. What about if the milk that went into the basar came back into the cholov, that he won't be able to help us with, because that's min b'mino. He won't be able to distinguish the tam of cholov that was in the basar and now it's back in the cholov. That's min b'mino, and that's nevela type of cholov. It's treif. Kafela won't help us with that. So the mechaber therefore says, listen, you're in luck if it was boiling, it fell in, and you took it out before it calmed down. Remember that, right? Great. Why? Because as long as it didn't calm down, if it was boiling hot, it could absorb, the meat could absorb, but it cannot. It does not have the ability to emit or float, right? To expel that time which it absorbed.
No, the mamash is that, not just
the mamash is in the top, right? But it does have the ability. We did explain. It does have the ability to emit time of its own, time that was there before the cooking began. That's, of course, that's always coming out. It's just new time and new mamashas, new blias that it's bolea as it's roteach. Kol zman sheroteach, as long as it's boiling, it does not have that ability to release it. But once it calms down, once the fire subsides, then you're in trouble. So if you took it out right away, it would be okay. Now, so we asked a few questions, or Shulchan raised the questions. Why doesn't he taste the basar itself? Why is he only tasting the cholov? Shit'am gam ta basar, ta chatichat basar. No, maybe it doesn't have any time. So we said that apparently the basar for sure absorbs, and we don't use the goy for that. Even if it tells us, I swear to you, there's no time of halab in there. We make that assumption that the fact that it went in, it absorbed, and of course...
now if there was 60 in the meat against just a little puddle of
little puddle, then you're right, yeah. Then you would have a bittul of whatever it is b'shishim, yeah.
But if it, taste-wise, we don't...
If you took it out, yeah. But taste-wise,
yeah,
taste-wise you wouldn't rely on it. So that's how we explained the Aruch HaShulchan's two questions, I think it was. One is, if you took it out right away, in other words, why does the ima help by the chalav and not by the meat? So we said that we don't rely on the goy for the te'ima on the basar because the basar does absorb. And as far as why do you need te'ima altogether? Why do you need te'ima altogether? You know, if you did remove it right away, then there shouldn't be any time inside the seer, inside the pot. So we explain what is being. What the time that is not going to be in the pot, you're right, is the time of the milk that we're concerned about. But there's still going to be time of basar, because that happens after a minute. That could happen even after a minute. As soon as it falls in the piece of meat into a sir that's roteach, the klal that we said that while it's roteach, it's boiling, it cannot expel or emit a flavor. That's a flavor that it's absorbing now, but a flavor of its own that it has from before. Like a pot having its own flavor. That's, of course, going to come out even within a minute or two.
Difference,
yeah.
If we're talking about the absorbing to the kfila, because I noticed the meat absorbing, not just taste of milk, the milk itself. So here we don't want to ask the kfila, it absorbs the milk, it has, but during the time it's absorbing the milk is not absorbing any meat of meat.
Right.
So maybe with respect to the taste that it's absorbing, we ask the kfila. But by the meat that absorbing mamashas of milk and not just taste of milk, there's nothing to ask. It's absorbing real milk.
Yeah. In other words, what you're saying is that. Well, yeah. What you're saying is that there's no even metzias to ask, because you're for sure going to feel the milk because it is absorbing mamashas.
Yeah. It's not only a question of will he feel, won't he feel. There's nothing to ask about. He's absorbing milk. See, why are we asking about the taste?
No.
Why are we asking about the taste? Not because of the taste. We're asking about the taste because of the principle of tam ke'ikar.
Right.
So if there is taste,
if it's detectable,
then it's as though we have mamashas.
Yeah.
But here we're not interested in the taste because we know we have mamashas.
Yes.
It's absorbing actual milk.
And because of that, you for sure will taste it.
So again, I'm not interested in the taste.
Right,
If I taste it, it's as though I have mamashas.
Right.
Here I have mamashas, I don't need it as though mamashas.
Yeah, it could be, sure, because then it's not even a question.
I don't care if I have a taste or not. I have mamashas already there.
Yeah.
Over here, I don't have my mashas, so there, if I have taste, tam ikar,
right.
So then it's as though it had mashas.
Right.
But here it has mashas for sure.
Very
I'm
true.
not interested in
it appears that you're correct.
Maybe
Yeah. That appears to be the case. Yeah. The Pri Megadim says, since we're not experts in when did it subside, Matai nirga meriticha. We're always going to be machmir here.
Both ways.
Both ways, yeah. We're not sure.
Who says that,
the Pri Megadim says.
By the way, you know who says that in the of the milk, we suspect it absorbed several times of its own? There are opinions like that.
There are, yeah.
You know who says that? The Pri Chadash.
Yeah, I saw.
Others.
No, I looked at that diyun, that discussion about all that, but I'd rather not get into that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we don't follow that. It's not a concern in the Chaber or the Ramah. All right, we did mention the Pritorah, very interesting Pritorah. Ora Chaim Chiber Sefer Pritorah. Peritoar. Yeah. Halakhot, yeah. And here, he says, very interesting, that if the piece of meat fell into the milk while it was heating up, in other words, it did not come to a boiling point yet, you're not going to say the klal, kol zman sheroteach, as long as it's boiling, lo maflit et ma shebala. It will not expel what it has absorbed. You will say that. It is possible, sheken. It's only im ze nafal if it fell when it's roteach. But if it's ham, it's hot, then you would not say that klal. In other words, it is possible that as it's heating up, whatever it absorbs, it lets out.
Now the meat, when that's already boiling, it's up.
Oh yeah, if it has not heated up yet, we learned in Hilchot Taaruvot, if you can see that it's not hot yet, you can get away with it. In other words, if your wife or you, let's not blame everything on the women, right?
What you just said about the Plitoar,
right?
The point of the Plitoar was that just like when it's off, it'll release what it
That's
absorbed.
when it will release.
So also when it's warming up.
Yes,
Plitoar, right?
exactly. The Plitoar says that just like when it
case.
calms down, when it subsides, shenirga, it will release. It also releases when it's heating up.
Exactly.
But it's hot.
So
not when it's heating up, but it's cold now.
My question is a different one.
Yeah.
But when the meat falls into boiling milk,
then it does not.
there will be a short fraction of time where the meat before it reaches full heat.
Right.
Wouldn't that segment of time also fall in the same category?
Yes, good question. That question is raised in Sif Beis, somewhat by the Aruch HaShulchan and by others, as far as he calls them fractions. There's always going to be a fraction. So maybe we'll get into it today. Yeah. But in the end, he says it's not a problem. Once we have a cloud, the fractions don't matter. And so we'll see how he explains it. So anyway, so we were talking about the Pritorah. That's a very important point because it could easily happen. You put by mistake a spoon, a Melicha spoon, you're mixing. Melicha fork, spoon, in a frying pan. Oh no. But it hasn't come to a boil yet. You just turn on the flame. Nothing happened yet. It's not even hot. Or it could be a little bit. It's warming up. Then you may be able to get away with it. It's not even yet soledet. It's not a problem if you know for a fact. But once it's hot, even though it's not boiling, it could be a problem. To steer with the wrong spoon or the wrong ladle or whatever it is, it's not only a problem for the ladle or for the spoon, it's a problem for the contents of the pot. I mean, that's what these simanim will be about. Tzadik Bet and Tzadik Dalet especially, putting the wrong kelim into the other keli. It was basar into halab, halab into basar, and sometimes doing it more than once.
And realizing it or not.
And realizing it, not realizing, in between. So that will be interesting. Okay, so let's go on now to Seif Bet. Now in Seif Bet, I think we need to give an introduction, a little bit of an introduction, so we can understand Seif Bet. Seif Bet basically says like this. It's all from the Mishnah, from the Gemara and Chulin. You have a little bit of milk. This time you don't have meat falling into milk, but you have chalav, napal chalav letoch gdera shel basar. So it's the opposite. You have a little bit of milk falling into a pot of cholent. Or meat, steak, whatever it is. A little bit of milk fell in. Well, let's hope next time it's mocha mix and not milk. And then you don't have a problem. If it's parva. But if it's milk, it could be a problem. It could be an issue. So in order to understand it, we'll make a little bit of a hagdama on what the Mishnah and Gemara discuss over there. The sugi over there discusses basically piapua. Piapua is the method of how ta'am travels. Let's call it that. Between pieces of meat. Or not necessarily pieces of meat, but even between meat and vegetables, regardless. We see that there are two methods. One is through cooking, if Isser is cooked with heter, that in that particular example, the piapua, or the transfer of taste, occurs through rotev, through liquid. In other words, bishul involves liquid. Liquid is the means through which the tam is being transferred from the Isser onto the heter. And in doing so, it affects the entire pot. The heat and the liquid combine to transfer the tam of the Isser throughout the Gdera. What's the second method? Sali, where there is no rotev. You have heat, but you don't have the liquid to help in transmitting or in transferring the flavor, the tam, from the Isser to the heter. So that is the two types of cases. Then you have another chiluk between Isur machmas atzmoi and heter shebola Isur. In other words, we have two methods of transferring tam, one with liquid, involving liquid, and one without, just heat, sleep. And then you have something called Isur machmas atzmoi. The whole thing is a shtickle, treif, a piece of meat, or chanan, basar b'chalv, and then you have a piece of meat that was heter, but was bolea an Isur. In other words, it's not Isur by itself, it was bolea Isur.
It's an carrier.
Okay, it's an Isur carrier, yeah. It's called, we call it an Isur balua. Because in this case, legabe Isur balua, there's different klalim. There will be different rules, as we saw in Taaruvot, and we'll see a little bit here too, on what happens concerning the plita of the tam, and how it can travel from one place to another. Okay, so let's just see briefly the differences between the two of them.
Well, that's Taaruvot, right?
Well, a little bit of what we did in Taaruvot, yeah. To understand Sif Beis, Gimel, and Dalet, we have to go through these nekudas. Two methods of transferring tam, one involving liquid, one with just plain heat, and one is a real Isser, machmat atzmo, it in itself is an Isser, versus the Isser balua. Alright, so let's talk about Isur machmas atzmo. So if you have something that is Asur by itself and it got cooked, so what does the rotev do? The sauce, the liquid, transmits the Isur throughout the whole heter in the Gdera. And what you have is a kula and a chumra in a sense. That if you have shishim, everything is mitztaref, except for that chaticha, of course, that is Asur machmas atzmo. Everything is mitztaref, and becomes mutter, except for that chaticha. So because you have shishim, everything will remain mutter, the chaticha will remain asur. And what's the chumrah? That if you don't have shishim, then you're in trouble. Everything is affected because of the rotev. So what you have here is a kula and a chumrah in a sense. The liquid is involving everything, and because it involves everything, if you have shishim, everything is mutter, except for the chaticha. The chaticha is, of course, it's a chatichat isur, sure. Yeah, of course, if you recognize. No, you don't recognize it, it's something else.
A chaticha is not a stick. The chaticha itself is a heter. You can't eat the heter without eating the balua.
No, we're not. We're talking about Isur machmas atzma right now.
Oh, so Isur
machmas atzma, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
you have shishim, everything is safe. That is asur, of course. Partial, yeah, it's being right. On the other hand, if you don't have shishim, you're in trouble because that same liquid that helps you be metzaref everything, to combine everything, now spreads the tam evenly everywhere, somewhat evenly. I mean, we don't know 100%, but somewhat evenly, right? And everything is asur. Yeah. If you don't recognize it.
Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah, right.
If you recognize, you have to be Messianic.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, so what happens if it's tzli and it's Isur machmas atzmo, right? Then the Rishonim make a chiluk. It's the Gemara also, and the Rishonim basically discuss it, that it will depend if the Isur machmas atzmo was shomin or not. Remember that? Is it mefapeh bekuloi or not? Will depend on if the piece is shomin, fatty, or it's kochush. If it's kochush, lean, then it's not. It's only kedei netila. All right. Now, by the way, I may not have mentioned it before, or last time, even in an Isur Shomen, that it's mefapea bekuloi, and you may have shishim, let's say, and you say, okay, it's okay, you still need a kedei netila at the place where they touched, there was contact. You know why? Because that is where point of contact is where there may be greater concentration of tam, of blias. We saw it a little bit in Taaruvot maybe. Even if there is shishim in a chatichas shuman, mefapea, in other words, that it's oser kulo, but you have shishim, you're safe.
Yeah, so you're talking about a shamen.
Shamen. So, but you're lucky because you have 60 against it. Still on the place b'makom hamaga, the place of contact, you still will take a netila in sli. Why? So they explain because yesh rikuz yoter gavoa, there is a greater concentration of blias, a potentially greater concentration of blias on that spot.
Right, because you can be sure that it really, it really.
Right.
Could have concentrated.
You recognize the hatikha and the rote.
Yeah.
That it is observed to be Masalik.
Well, obviously, yeah.
It's a different story.
Yeah, but here we're talking
about
without rote, the mikvah tzli. You have two touching, there's heat.
You have to take that part.
Right. So what we said is that even if it's fatty, the time goes all over, and you have shishim, you're still going to need a kedei netila. All right. So that was Isur Machmas Asmo. What's the din, however, by Isur Bolua, the tzli? See, Isur Bolua by Bishul is easy. That liquid is a troublemaker. The liquid really spreads it out. It takes it out. But by tzli, it's not as strong. By tzli, it does not necessarily take out, and I'll tell you why I said not necessarily, to take out the Isur HaBalua. Right? By Bishul, the Rotev spreads it. But wait a minute, if the Rotev spreads it, why doesn't the original piece of heter that was boleh become mutter? Through the liquid.
Well, it's mitzaref to the 60. So
No, it is. But why don't we say, why don't we say, but now it's in the pot together with everything else, there's shishim, let it become mutter too.
You can't feel it.
Right. So we said, we paskin efshel esochto asur. Once a piece of meat became asur and it fell in again, even if there's shishim keneged that piece or keneged that is or whatever, that piece will always remain asur, right? We've covered this many, many times.
But then we're talking about Isur Balua. So the piece itself actually is really an Isur, but you cannot consume it without also consuming Isur along with it. And that's why you can't get rid of it.
Some of it will, we suspect some of it will always remain.
Yeah.
Some of the Isur, right. Efshel Esachta also, right. Not only that, does it remain also according to some poskim, that Isur Balua, that Chatichas Heter that has an Isur Balua has become Chanan. According to those who hold Chanan Bishar Isurim. Not only is there Efshel Esachta Asur, that is Chanan, which means that you're going to need Shishin Keneged the whole piece. Not only against the little bit of milk that it absorbed. Or the little bit of, not milk. Sorry, Isser, yes, exactly. So then, according to those shitas, it's more trouble. Yeah. Right, in Mutar also, right. But what happens if there was sli, there was no rotev, and you had two pieces touching each other, roasting, barbecuing next to each other, and there is no liquid involved? So we saw that a little bit in the Taaruvot, it's in the Gemara Kufches, I think, that which is our case, which is we're going to see is similar to the case of Seif Beis of a tipas chalav falling into or onto a piece of meat that's in a pot. But that piece of meat is not exactly in the pot with everything else. It's sticking out. So in some ways, if it's sticking out, and that's going to be the machlokes, how much is it sticking? Is it completely? Is it halfways? That's a big machlokes Rashi toys, right? But if it's sticking out, imagine you have a lot of meat sticking out, or even one piece of meat sticking out,
from the right.
From the right, so it's not in the liquid. So any milk that falls on that meat, it's a form of tzli. Okay? So in other words, so based on that example, right? An example of tzli, and you have an Isur Balua. So what's the din by Isur Balua? Isur Balua does not travel. The Balua, the Blia does not travel too far. It can't. There's no liquid. Kedei netila, by tzli, right? Unless you hold like the Rashba. And apparently the Mechaber in Kuf Hey Taaruvot does go with the Rashba that if the Isser Balua, if the Belia, that which has been absorbed, is Shaman, then it also will be able, but Tzli also be able to travel all the way, even without Rot. That's the Rashba. But if it's not Shaman, no.
So according to the Ramah, if he also follows this route, what is Shaman and not?
Exactly.
Everything should...
But on that he's not Machmir.
On that he's not Machmir.
We're not going to be Machmir so many Chumras. To be Machmir by... We're not Bekim bin Kochosh L'Shaman. That's one. Mm-hmm. And if it's an Isa Balua Shaman, to Paskin like the Rashba too. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? Not everybody's going to be not everybody's going to buy that one. That's already being... That we say, it's probably... If we think it's Kochosh, it's Kochosh. You can take a guess on that, an educated guess. Yeah. So in the case of Tzli, with an Isa Balua, it could fall. In other words, we learn there's an expression in the Gemara, mivla bola, miflet lo polat. In other words, through heat you can absorb, but not necessarily you can emit. Not necessarily can you bring out that tam that was absorbed from before. So here, an Isa Balua, unless of course it's shaman, will not necessarily travel to the next piece of meat sitting underneath it. Even though it in itself, right now, sitting on top of the pot may become asur, may become treif, it may not affect the ones in the bottom. Okay? Because there's no liquid traveling between them.
Now we're talking about where there is liquid in the pot, but it's not affecting that piece.
That piece, yeah.
But then we have the problem with what's being poured out.
Yeah. Okay, that's a separate problem. When it's poured out, it's a whole nother balagan. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the only thing that we need to keep in mind right now is that there is such a machloket as if the balua is shaman or not, will it make a difference? Nachon? The Rashba is the one that holds that if the balua is shaman, it can go. Okay. If that's the case, what happens if milk falls onto a piece of meat? Is milk considered shaman or not? The Rashba is the one that wants to hold. He holds that shaman does travel. But you don't learn that din from the case of cholov. In other words, you may be tempted to learn the din that I'm telling you, that a belia of something that is shaman travels. Don't think you learned that out from cholov. The reason why cholov affects the meat as it does here in our case is not because it's a davar shaman. In other words, it's important to remember here because there's going to be a machloikas here in Seif Beis as to why or what exactly is happening.
No, what is the case we're talking about? There is a piece that absorbs milk.
Right.
So right now I'm not even interested. What's now with this meat? Is it an Issa Balua?
The piece of meat, yes.
Why is it an Issa Balua? The milk is no Issa.
No, right now.
Milk is kosher milk.
No. It's better if we read it inside. Before I read it inside, I just want to prepare you that there is such a machlokes legabe the Isa Balua being shaman, and whether milk is shaman or not. Let's put it that way.
But the thing with the Isa Balua being shaman,
right,
becomes relevant when we're talking about one piece Isser relative to another piece that it's touching when there is no liquid.
Correct.
So why don't we defer the discussion of that till after we've discussed what is with the piece of the
I understand what you're saying, but
because the piece that absorbs the milk, the is chanam.
Yeah.
Unless
but
it has
in order to this is more like an agdama. In order to understand Seif Beis, but you made a good point. There are two separate parts to it. There is pieces that are beneath the piece that is being affected. Right? Okay. There's a piece of meat that has milk falling on top of it. That is one problem. That piece of meat, and there is the entire other gedera that may or may not be affected as a result either of rotev or as a result of proximity. Okay? Yeah. So yes, they're two separate things. Nevertheless, we need to understand the klalim here. The klal is there is a machloket between Isser Balua, or not even an Isser Balua, something that has been nivla into another piece of meat, whether it can travel without rotev, only through heat. So the Rashba is the one that holds if it's a davar shaman, it can travel. But don't I don't learn that from Chalav, he says, because Chalav is not Shaman, according to the Rashba. So here it's interesting, the Rashba holds Davar Shaman does travel, but Chalav is not Shaman. Maram ben Rutenberg, and the Gra, I think, learns Pshat, that's Pshat in Toisus, says the Chalav is a Shaman. It's an Isur, it's an Isur Shaman. Okay? So keep that in mind, that he does hold that it's an Isur Shaman. And he holds the other way around, that Isur Shaman, if it's an Isur Balua, does not travel. In other words, they pretty much hold exact opposite views. The Rashba holds Isur Shaman travels, but Chalav is not Shaman. Maram Berutim says no, Chalav is a kind of Shaman, it's fatty. Why? Because there's remember we talked about it, there are parts to the milk that you can make cheese with. There's butter with. There's parts that are very, very fatty, which you remove from the top, the cream, yeah. So therefore, in some ways, it's a shaman, but he holds, like many others, that an Isser Balua shaman does not travel, not like the Rashba. Raut Reutev. That was in Siman Kufhei. Okay, now that we have a little bit of a Hakdama, let's read a little bit of Seif Beis. Nofal Cholov Letoich Derech Shel Basar. So you have milk this time falling into a pot of meat. All right. The Mechaber does not tell us where this meat is soaking. If you just read it, it appears to be, it must be actually, that this piece of meat is sticking out. Poshup Pshat. It's not inside. Now, we're obviously talking about a kedera that's on the fire, a kedera that is very, very hot. That we know. We started off saying that in Sif Aleph. Yore Deah. So here it must be a hot piece of hot pot, otherwise there wouldn't be a problem. So we have milk falling into kedera shel basar. He uses the same method as he used before. Go get a goy, a kafela, or whatever, to taste that piece on which the milk landed, if it has any tam chalav. If it does, a kol motor. What's a kol? This piece of meat. Even this piece of meat. Everything is motor. V'im yesh b'chaticha miteimas chalav, but if that piece of meat does taste a little bit milky, nesra oisa chaticha. That chaticha is asur. Only that chaticha. In parentheses, Uledidan, the Ramah, the Ein Soimchim Ma'oiv de Kochavim, that we don't rely on a goy, but in a shishim b'chaticha, on that piece, you better have shishim on that piece. You can't use a goy. Vim lav, kulo asur, that piece is going to be treif. You can't eat it. By the way, don't forget that if something is treif in basar b'cholav, you can't feed it to the dog. Right? You may wonder, oh, okay, I'll just give it to the dog. No. It's also behano. Yes. Yeah. Therefore, im yesh b'chaticha mitimas cholav, not only is it necessary, so chaticha misharim bekulo. Misharim bekulo, all of a sudden, the Chaver says, yeah, you have to look at the whole pot. Im hoya bekol ma sheyesh b'kedero me'achaticho, ve'hayerek, ve'hamarak, ve'tavlin. If you have everything in the pot, from the pieces, from the vegetables, from the liquid, from the spice, kedei sheteheh chaticha zu, that this one piece will only be echad mishishim me'akol 1/60 of everything. So the chaticha is a surah. Oh wow, the chaticha still remains asar, ve'ashar mutar, and everything else is mutar. Okay.
Yeah, it's the chaticha.
So let's take it one step at a time, because here it begins to get a little bit difficult. There is tam. The goy said there is tam on the chaticha. All right, nesa oiso chaticha. Fine. Now what? What about the rest of the pot? The rest of the pot, we're not done yet. The Mechaber says misharim bekulo. For some reason, I don't know yet why, I have to involve the rest of the pot too. Misharim bekulo, im hoya bekol ma sheyesh bakdero, me'achaticho, ve'yerek, ve'amarak, ve'tavlin, everything, all the spices, the vegetables, the liquid. Kedei sheteheh chaticha zu echad mishishim. So this one piece of meat that the milk fell on is 1/60 of everything. A chaticha asura, that one chaticha is also b'ashar mutar. The rest of the pot is okay. All right. Well, apparently, the rest of the pot is in trouble too. I didn't know. That's what the Mechaber is telling us, that you're not done yet. You now got to consider the rest. But if you have shishim, you're fine, except for the chaticha.
But you have to have 68 ticha.
Yeah. Now the Mechaber adds some very, very key words that are a little bit cryptic. Bamed Dvarim Amurim, when was this halacha said? Under what circumstances? B'shelo niyar akderim b'tchilo. When you did, if the milk fell in and you never mixed the contents in the beginning, when the Shushan Aruch halacholov. Ela lebesof, you did it towards the end, maybe. Below kisa, and you did not cover with the lid. But if you did any one of these in the very beginning, avalimir mitchila vatsof, if you were mixing from the beginning till the end, or shakisa, or you covered the pot, mishat nefila, from the moment it fell in, ve'atsof, and it was covered till the end, hakol mitzvah levatel tama cholov, that everything in the pot can combine to cancel out, to annul the little bit of milk, and even that chaticha will become mutter. In other words, there is one way that the milk, the piece of meat that where the milk fell onto, even it can become mutter. When? As soon as it fell, within a second or so, you started mixing. Oh no. But of course you didn't do it intentionally, as we will see later on, you can't do that intentionally, depending when. Or you covered it, you placed the lid on top. Once you place the lid, the steam goes up and down, it mixes everything. So if everything is mixed, either through a ladle or through the lid, Baruch Hashem, then you can even have that piece of meat, the shishim, right, keneged the chalav, right, because everything is included now. When are things not included? If you had the piece of meat first absorb some milk, then it becomes treif, and you didn't mix it. Oh, you didn't mix it in the beginning? Then it became treif. Then you started mixing? Well, guess what? Now you need 60 against the whole piece of meat. And that piece of meat will remain asur.
It's observed fast.
Yeah, the what?
The pot is hot.
Of course, yeah.
Observes the milk.
Sure. So now, there's a little bit of questions over here. The only thing we know is that the first part of the Mechaber talks about the piece of meat. The second part of the Mechaber speaks about the rest of the pot. And he tells you, listen, you have an advantage if you mix it right away. The advantage is that everything combines to go against the milk, and that even that piece of meat where the milk fell first can become mutter. That's the one advantage of doing that. If you did not do that, you have problems, not only with the piece of meat, you also have to consider the rest. So there's some doubt as to what are we talking about over here? I mean, is the piece of meat outside? Is it inside? Is it halfway? What's going on? We won't be able to get into all the chilukim on that. Simple, poshup shot, it just means, like I mentioned earlier, it's outside of the pot. If it's inside the pot, mostly covered with liquid around it, just because it fell on a little bit of meat, why shouldn't everything combine to go against the milk? Why should that? It must be, for a piece of meat to become chanan, it must be that it was by itself, and it became chanan, and because it has no help. It stands alone against the milk. Chanan is a problem, of course. Everybody knows what chanan is. Chatichat naset nevela, and now you need shishim keneged kol hachaticha, the whole piece. All right, so let's take it one step at a time. Okay, we don't know for sure the status of where this piece of meat is standing exactly, but we're assuming it's mostly out. It's an assumption. What does the Mechaber mean that what I said is only when you did not mix it? But what does he say? What you
just said.
Yeah.
That piece of the meat stuck out.
Yes.
Because if the meat stuck out and is not in the liquid, then how do the carrots and the paws, how is it mitzdaref to mevatel that piece of meat? That
okay.
You need to have the piece of meat out in the roiter in order to anything else in the pot be affected
right.
by the meat and to mevatel it.
You're right. So that's why he says "Bamed dvarim amuru b'shelo niyera k'tera batchila."
No, that's something.
Ela lebasof.
No, that's something else.
No, but you did it in the end.
No, that's something else. That's when you're mixing it or you're covering it. I'm talking before that. Before that, he already said, before you start mixing anything.
Yes.
Before that, he already said, we measure all the contents, you're using all the contents of the pot. And then the piece itself.
But he explains himself.
No, but that's before you mix anything.
No.
Before you got to mix anything. If you mix anything, the chaticha itself is also permitted.
No.
Yes.
No. That's
We
what
just
he
said that.
No. He differentiates. He do two kinds of mixings. He says there's always going to be a mixture in this case. If there's never a mixture,
Mixing.
if there's never a mixing of the contents at a given point,
Yes.
then we're not concerned about the rest of the
But he
contents.
doesn't say that.
He says it at the end.
No, but in the beginning he says,
qualifies.
if the milk fell, we measure using all the contents of the pot. This includes the other pieces.
Right.
But here he didn't speak about mixing.
You're right.
anything.
You're right. So maybe the grammar or the order of the syntax of the words would be different if you had written it.
No.
Yeah, you're right.
He wrote it.
Yeah, but he didn't write it that
He
way.
didn't mention mixing anything.
He writes it. He has a different style. So that's why he uses the words bamed dvarim amurim. 1 second. At the end of the seif, it's not actually at the end, but at the end of this halacha, bamed dvarim amurim, what I said just before, בשלא נהיה רק תירה בתחילה כשנפל החלב אלא לבסוף. I'm only talking about when there was no mixing in the beginning, as soon as it fell, but there was mixing at the end. Obviously.
It's elect. When they become Hanan.
It's already become Hanan, and now that Hanan is in the rest of the pot. He did mix it. If something is sticking out, it by itself, it's a real pure tzli. Then Ilan is right. What is he talking about here? That you take mishar everything. Why should everything be mitzaref? It's because at some point they did become mixed, but it was later on. Later on, I'm at a disadvantage. There's a Hanan in the meantime. Now I need shishim can get a whole chaticha, and even if I have shishim, that chaticha remains also because it's Hanan. But if you're locked out near mitchila ve'at sof, or shekisa mishat nefila from the very beginning, at sof akol mitzaref. And everything is okay. You're fine if you have shishim. So the question.
So wait a second. So you're telling me if the piece absorbed the milk,
Right.
and I didn't stir, I can eat
Right away.
Didn't stir at all.
Right.
At all.
Right.
Then I can eat whatever is in the pot. I can eat.
Yes, yes, you can. You may have to take a kedei netila from the piece.
No, I can't. You know why?
Why?
Because at least part of the piece in the pot is in the liquid. Talking about one piece is sticking out. But either it's touching something that's in the liquid, or
Right.
it itself is in the liquid partially.
No. Oh, let's say it's
It's
not.
not in the liquid. It's
It's not
hanging. It's suspended in midair.
No. You have a lot of meat.
Yes.
There's liquid.
Yes.
You don't want the pot. You don't want the pot to
It's
burn.
cooking.
You don't want to burn it.
Well, we're talking about cooking.
Yeah,
so that's
but it's piled up. Baruch Hashem, there's shefa. a nice full pot.
So you have one of two possibilities. One piece of this little stick is lying on top of the others, and they're
Right.
just sticking out of the roite.
Right.
Or one of the pieces of meat is so large that part of that piece is
That's
sticking
correct.
out of the roite.
Right.
One of the two cases.
That's correct.
Now, the piece of meat that absorbed the milk.
Yes.
This piece of meat, it's sticking out or it's a separate piece.
Completely.
In either case, it became Hanan.
Yes.
Okay. Now that it's Hanan, I'm not worried about the milk anymore. I'm worried about the whole piece itself. Now that piece itself is now min b'mino.
All right.
And the piece itself is either,
What do we mean, Demina? What do we mean?
it's Hanan now.
It's
a
Hanan.
nevela.
It's a
So I have now
nevela.
a nevela in the pot.
Okay.
Now this nevela in the pot either is partially in the water,
Okay.
or the nevela in the pot is sitting smack
On
on
top.
another piece.
That's correct.
So I have a nevela in the water. Let's take one of the two cases.
Yes.
I have a nevela partially in the water. I can eat the rest in the food in the pot.
What? Yes.
I have a nevela partially in the water.
Yes.
I can eat the rest.
No,
I don't
no.
need 60 against the nevela.
No, we didn't explain it that way. I made the assumption, like the shitas that hold that the mechaber is talking about, that it's outside the roiter,
But if
not inside, not partially.
So we're talking about.
Some
outside.
say it can
We're
be
talking about
partially
outside. So
right.
it either there's two ways it could be outside. Either because it's partially sticking out, or it's sitting on top of another.
Completely sticking out. In other
Either
words,
it's
it's out
partially sticking out, or it's on top of another.
on top of another one. Right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I dealt with one of the two cases.
Right.
So in the one of the two cases where it's partially sticking out, you agree that I need 60 against the piece without ever having stirred in that pot. In the partially sticking out, you agree?
Yes, of course. If
Okay.
you want to make it mutter, either you have
no,
a.
I'm not the one. I don't want to make anything mutter. In order to eat anything else in that pot,
No,
I
no.
need 60 if it's partially sticking out and it's nevela.
Not partially. It's
No, so I'm talking about the case where it is partially. We'll talk about the
we
case where it's not partially.
we haven't yet. We haven't gone into that yet. I made the assumption,
Yes.
and that's the only case we're going to cover today. Because it gets
that
more...
expression was not expressly made, but now we'll make it.
Yeah, no, I made the assumption is that the piece is completely outside the roitiv.
Completely outside of it. So, but it has to be sitting on someone else that isn't.
Yes,
the roitiv.
that's correct.
Okay, so now we have a piece that's a nevela sitting on another piece that's in the roitiv.
Right.
Okay, so does the nevela now affect the piece in the roitiv?
It may kedei natila.
Kedei natila now, so that it depends on whether the kedei natila is in the roitiv or not.
Yes, but that's a separate problem right now. We're not concerned so much about kedei natila. You may have to take
the
from the
kedei
piece
natila is in the roitiv and affects everything else in the pot.
from the yes, but that's not the question here. The question here is the piece that became completely asu because there was no shishim and it became chanan, and now it may, because being mixed with the rest of the gdera, it may affect the whole gdera. You need shishim connected the whole chanan, right? Or the whole pot, the whole contents of the pot combine to be mevatel that initial cholav that fell in, and that piece remains mutter.
But the mechaber doesn't say.
It,
the mechaber says if a drop of milk fell into a pot of meat.
Right.
Into a pot.
No, but you have to read the whole thing. But what's bamed dvarim amurim b'shalon yera kedero b'tchilo k'shanof ala cholav ela b'soif? You only did it at the end.
But that doesn't mean that you have to have mixed it at the end. That just means that you always mix your food.
Well,
you have to put something in a pot and just leave it alone. But the mixing came too late.
But that's when you would have the problem. There was some mixing.
You don't necessarily hold it on Shabbos.
Not on Shabbos, yeah.
But you mix it before Shabbos.
Before Shabbos, I mix it. Yeah, okay, yeah. You're right.
No. When you make food, you mix it. You don't put things in a pot and leave it standing.
If you mix it at the end, it's already become
Chanan, yeah. That's the point of it.
But the point is,
so it's not going to be.
But the point is, you don't even have to have mixed it in order to have a problem.
Maybe they cover on
it's already become haticha nevela.
Okay, but anyway, that's where the Aruch HaShulchan comes in handy. And he takes apart to the words of the mechaber, very, very nicely, and he asks 3 questions here on the mechaber. Okay, and through the questions you were able to understand a little bit of what's going on here, why there's various machlokesim. So question number 1 that he asks in the mechaber is like this: okay, I understand that there's a difference between mixing in the beginning and mixing in the end. Okay, but what's this mixing? He says like this: Abalimnir mitchila ve'ad sof. Since when does somebody have to be mixing from the beginning for the next half an hour until then?
What does it mean ad sof? Okay.
Even though the question is really not on the mechaber, the question is on the Gemara uses that language. What is being meant here? Mitchila ve'ad sof. So what Eva is saying is lav dafka. Yeah, some say lav dafka, but you can't say that the Gemara said lav dafka. I mean, lav dafka means not necessarily. Why would he want to quote verbatim those words unless there's maybe there is a big chidush over here, and we will see that according to the Aruch HaShulchan there is a big chidush.
Maybe when they put the spices on it and then they mix it and then they put the spices.
Yeah, no, but the first question of the Aruch HaShulchan is why does it say it? Why does the Mechaber say? But if you mix it from the very beginning, which is helpful, ve'ad sof, and until the end, don't leave out the words ve'ad sof. I don't need that. As soon as you mix it at the beginning, you're safe. What's the words ve'ad sof mean? Good question. I had the same question when I first learned it. Why mention that? Yeah. Simply, if you say without the Aruch HaShulchan with the chidush, it's a very nice chidush. It's a very nice, interesting chidush. But without anybody's chidush, the pashut pshat means that you did it in the beginning, you did it a little bit in the end, you did it all the time. As long as you did it in the beginning too, that's what he means. That's the pashut pshat. Or shekisa misha'at nefila ve'at sof. Again, ve'at sof. It was covered from the beginning till the end. What difference is, even if it was just in the beginning? And by the way, the Ramah is going to say here, he's going to clarify that all of you don't need the words atsof anyway. But we'll cover that another. Let me see here. Okay, let me read the Ramah now. V'chen im lo ni'er klal, lo betchila ve'lo besof. Even if you did not mixed, not in the beginning and not in the end, ve'lo kisa klal, and you didn't cover it all. Im yesh shishim b'gdera neged tipat chalav shenafal, eno asur rak hachaticha levad. Only that piece, you see, Ilan? Yeah. Only that piece. If there was never any mixing at all, only that piece would be asur. Sharak dera mutar. Beis Yosef, Sharaybet. V'chein, Forget the word sofi, says the Ramah. If everything was just done in the beginning, covering or mixing.
Wait. You just quoted this Ramah.
Yeah.
Look what you quoted.
Yes.
Because he says, if there is 60 in the whole pot against the drop of milk, if the situation is that the piece of meat that absorbed the milk is sticking out completely, what do I care if there's 60 in the pot against the drop of milk at all? It's an isolated piece of meat that absorbed the milk.
That's going to be the next question of their Orcha Shulchan.
Not hanging it.
No. But what Ilan is troubled by.
No, but I'm troubling you.
Yeah, no. Is that if in fact what the Ramah says, that if nothing was not mixed, not in the beginning and not in the end, so there was no mixing.
And it's sticking out.
And there's shishim in Niddah neged the tipas cholov, eina osur rak chaticha levad. That piece is going to be osur. Why should the rest be osur anyway?
No, why should the rest factor into anything regarding that drop of milk? That
in other words, why do we need to factor them at all? Who needs them? Right. All right.
No, not who needs it. Not why do we need it. How does it accomplish anything with respect to a drop of milk that never went into the pot? Okay,
same thing. How does it accomplish? And the Ramah says, nir betchila, or kisa miyad. Nir velo kisa basof. He says, yeah, I would agree with you that even if the mechaber would have left out the word sof, as long as he covered it in the beginning with the kisui, or he mixed it at the beginning, even if he didn't do anything at the end, mitztaref, everything combines, vehu sheni'ar v'kisa miyad shenafal shamas. As long as he did it right away. Exactly. So the Ramah already helps us with the first question from a different angle. He says, don't worry about that basof. Okay, fine, thank you, Ramah. But why did he say it anyway? That's the Orcha Shulchan. The Orcha Shulchan understands the Ramah says you don't need it. But why mention the words lebasof? That was the first question of the Orcha Shulchan on the Mechaber that makes a tremendous important differentiation between whether the kol hakdera mitztarefet combines the whole contents to cancel out that tipa or cancel out that chaticha, right? It depends whether you mixed it right away, then you're in luck, or whether you did it later on. And if you did it later on, that piece became a chanan, now you need against the whole thing. So that's an important differentiation. But so question number one is, what's the words ad sof? Question number two, if you did not mix it at all, why should you need shishim keneged the chalav? The rest of the pot did not absorb any milk, right?
What does having 60 help?
Yeah, no, in achiname. What does 60 help? But why should I need it to begin with? The rest of the gedera is not really being affected by this tipa cholav that I need to think about. Do I have shishi keneged? So that was the second question that Ilan also raised. Third question. If the chaticha is in fact, like the assumption we made, completely chutz la'roitev, if the chaticha is completely outside the liquid, why should it ever become completely asur if there's no shishim in the chaticha? Why is this any worse than sli? Excellent question. You have a little bit of milk falling into a piece of meat that if we say it's completely out of the liquid, and there's no shishim in that chaticha against the chalab, why shouldn't it be all asur? It's sli. There's no bishul.
No, but the tzli only goes with respect to how that piece affects others in the pot, not with respect to how it is affected by absorbing milk. It absorbs the milk. What does the water accomplish?
No, it doesn't. No.
What does the water accomplish?
Yeah.
The presence of the water accomplishes the taste travels.
Yeah.
Okay, so here if I have tzli, I don't have a taste traveling. What does the taste traveling accomplish? Tam ke'ikr. That now I have as though the whole milk spread everywhere.
Yeah.
But here, where the meat absorbed to the milk, and it doesn't have 60 against the milk, so it means that this particular piece of meat has the taste of milk.
But
we had this before one on top of
the
other.
That's something else, because there you have the traveling from one piece to another. Without liquid, taste doesn't travel. Here we have the piece that absorbed milk. I don't need the taste to travel. It has the mamashas of milk. And again, remember, taste traveling is relevant because tam ke'ikr. If I have the presence of taste, even though I don't have the milk itself, the presence of milk taste is as though I had milk there. But here the meat absorbed milk. I don't need a taste. It has milk. I have mamashas of milk in that meat.
Yeah, but that's not exactly liquid, like
need liquid.
cooked.
I don't need liquid.
Yeah.
Because it absorbs the real milk. I don't need liquid. Liquid I only need in order for taste to travel. Okay, I don't need the taste to travel because the meat absorbed the milk.
Let me see if I can find it to you in Taaruvot.
of liquid cannot save a piece that absorbed an Isser. The piece absorbed the Isser. We're not talking about two dry things that touch each other.
Okay, so I'm going back to Hilchos Taaruvot, where the Mechaber discusses Tato Gavar, which of course means that it makes the whole thing, that bottom one in the bottom is the one that's hot, remember? It heats up the whole thing. So he explains in Seif Dalet, the Med Vorim Amurim, that the bottom one, if it's hot and it has an Isser falling on top of it, it becomes completely hot, and it's Asr. Keshenofal letoch hatav shel. This is, this is a continuation of something else, not the Tato Gavar. Going back to the Isser.
This is for the taste to travel from one to the other.
Right. I'm going back to the original, not to, in other words, I'm bypassing the Tato Gavar because it follows it. Now, אבל איסור בין חם בין קר, okay, שנופל על הצלי שאצל האיש אינו עושה אלא כדי נטילה.
But this is
okay.
This is something that's solid with something that's solid.
No, it doesn't differentiate.
When cold milk falls on a hot piece of meat. Let's go back to Tata Gavar just for a second. Cold milk falls on hot piece of meat. What's the din?
Yeah, but one second.
Rabbi Kin.
Yeah.
Let me ask you quickly.
Yeah.
I have a hot piece of meat at the bottom.
Right.
I have milk falling on that hot piece of meat. What's the din?
1 second. Yeah, well, there he gave another example with chalev, not with cholov.
Yeah, but
that
quick question for you.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. I have a hot piece of meat at the bottom.
Right.
I have a hot piece of it at the bottom.
Right.
Cold milk falls on it.
Right.
What's the din? By Tata Gavar. What's the din?
By Tata Gavar means he would warm. No, it all depends.
Cold milk falls on hot meat.
Yeah.
Hot meat is in the bottom, cold milk is at the top.
Yeah.
What's the din?
Let me just 1 second before I answer you. Let me just check one more thing here.
There's a Mishnah I pulled in one Aleph.
1 second. Okay, look at Siman Tzadik Aleph if you have it. That's what we learned. The Basar b'cholav roitchin shenis arbu yachat. The Basar cholav that mixed up, they were both hot. Whether the cold meat fell into the hot milk.
Let me first find Tzadik Aleph. Tzadik Aleph, you said?
Yeah. Sif Dalet.
Like Aleph Sif Dalet.
Yeah. So that's where that's the Mekor to the din that you're talking about. So there is this arvo afilu basar tzon into cholov teach cholov tzon into basar teach kol osu mishum tato gavar. Oh, so kol osu. So the Shach says, imein shishim. V'dafka, right. V'dafka shenofal letoch basar teach shemunach bekdeira, אבל לא על basar teach tzli. Chutz legdero ledasatur.
Chutz legdero.
Right.
Ledasatur.
Veledidam becholinin also ad shishim for another reason, like we will see later on in Siman Tzadik Beis, which we're learning right now, right? The reason for it. Okay, but Poshet Pshat, that is what the Aruch HaShulchan is talking about over here. That's the question that he's raising over here, is that in reality it should not be asur more than a kedei netila. If it's on a piece of meat that's sticking out.
According to the Ramah, if a drop of milk falls on a piece of meat that's sticking out of the roitiv, according to
the Aruch HaShulchan right now,
according to everyone, if a piece of meat is sticking out,
right,
and a drop of milk falls onto it, according to everyone, that piece of meat becomes a chanan.
Yeah. So that's the question over here.
What saves it from being chanan is if it's in the roitiv and you stir it quickly.
Yeah.
But if it's sticking out of the roitiv,
if it's completely sticking out of, but that's the question The question is, why should the whole thing become usher, not just a kedei netila, like the din is by tzli, like that, like I just pointed out to you from the way the
But
tour.
tzli, we're talking about something that's
Anytime,
yavish with yavish.
no. Even with this, even with the case of milk falling on a hot,
That's not called tzli.
yeah, it's a form of tzli. There's no roitiv involved.
The milk itself is right.
Remember, if there's no, yeah, you're right. If it's a lot, we talked about it before.
Whatever the amount of milk
If it would
the
be
milk
a lot,
itself is liquid.
if it would be a lot, it would be a little bit different. The case of where the milk was salty, we said that it would be absorbing because it was liquid. So davar tzolul, it would make a difference. But anyway, that's the question. We'll get back into it on Thursday, Mitzvah Hashem. I just wanted to give you a little bit of what's going on over here, and this is a very appropriate question to ask over here. That if you hold that a piece of meat here is outside, why should it ever become asur kuloi? So let's just quickly go through his explanations.
But by the way, there's a Mishnah.
Because we're going to have to review this anyway again.
Mishnah in Chulin,
Yeah.
108 Aleph.
Yeah,
Mishnah in Chulin.
right, Right.
Kufret.
yeah. That's what this is. That's what this is.
If a drop of milk fell into a piece of meat, if the milk gives taste, then meat is asur.
So you have to learn Tosfos.
Tosfos says what? Tosfos.
No, then we have to understand. That's going to.
So
No.
Tosfos says what?
No.
Tosfos says this case of the Mishnah is where the meat is completely sticking out of the roitiv.
Okay, so
But if it was partially in the roitiv, the milk would go through it. And it doesn't
exactly.
become
That's
asur.
that. Now you're getting into the whole sugya. Now you're getting into the meat of the whole sugya of the machlokes, Rashi and Tosfos. What are we talking about over here? You're right.
So according to Tosfos, this is a piece of meat that's sticking out of the roitiv.
Right.
So
So according to him, it would not be a question. We're not talking about. There's different shitas here. How each one holds. Is it out? Is it in? Would it make a difference if it's halfway in? What if it's 3/4 in? It also makes a
But
difference.
that only with
Yeah.
respect to whether the piece of meat becomes chanan, or whether everything else in the
Both.
pot is...
Both. Whether everything else in the pot is mistaref and is or affected, and this piece of meat itself.
Well, it's
in roitev.
The two things... No.
Do you know? By the way, let me remind you something. Remember the famous Isur Dovuk? We're going to be seeing that in the Ramos.
Yes. It's a double right.
Isur
Right.
Dovuk.
So that's,
What
that's,
happens?
That's,
So no.
that's part of the Chanan question.
So that will remind you
Yes.
that what happens if a piece of meat is halfway soaking in. Okay, there's a question there. When we get to there, we'll discuss it. The top portion becomes also the bottom one is okay.
No, the question
Is that possible?
No.
Half becomes treif.
No. The question is a different. If it's partially in the
Yes,
roitiv,
right.
let's take the two extreme cases and then the middle case.
Right.
If it's completely sticking out,
Right.
there is no one there to save me.
Right.
Either it personally has 60 against the milk, and then it can mevatel the milk. If it's less than 60 against the milk, it becomes chanan. There's no one to save it because it's sticking out. It's alone confounded with milk.
Right.
If it's completely in the roitiv,
Right.
then the roitiv will affect it, that the milk spreads out amongst everything in the kedera, and the meat itself doesn't need to have 60 against the milk. It's sufficient that everything together with the meat has a 60 against the milk, because the milk will go straight through into everything else.
Yeah.
because of the roitiv.
Okay. Yeah.
So then we have the middle case where it's partially sticking out.
Right.
So the question is, do we judge this middle case to be one like it's sticking out, meaning to say that because it's partially sticking out, the milk is prevented from shooting straight through and spreading throughout the pot?
Right.
Or do we look at, I think that this is the Rambam? No?
We'll see it.
Or do we say,
Yeah.
or the Rashi.
Yeah.
Or do we
Right.
say, no, because it's partially immersed, so this partial immersion already is sufficient to make the milk
Right.
shoot through the meat and spread through the
Yeah.
other pot.
But let's leave it till we get to it.
Okay,
It's going to be
sure.
otherwise it's very hard to follow all these things.
So let's leave
But
it
I'm right.
But one thing
but-
it shows us, a piece of meat that's sticking
Right.
out of the roitiv altogether either has 60 against the milk, and then it's okay, it's mevatel the milk. If it doesn't have 60, it's kanan.
Yeah, not necessarily. Okay, so we will see. So that's what the Aruch HaShulchan asks. Again, based on that, and based on the shitas who hold that it's not going to become completely asur, it's going to be a form of tzli and therefore kedei netila. Why should it ever become asur? I mean, it's a question that they all talk about it. Obviously, because not everybody holds that all of it should be asur. Then why does the Mechaber say it's all asur? What is it based on? Okay, we have to understand that. So basically, real quickly, the terutzim are like this. The first question about why does he say be'at sof? This is just the Aruch HaShulchan. And actually, I think that there may be others who hold like him. You know what the words ad sof mean was that you mix it from the beginning till the end? The Aruch HaShulchan says, let me ask you a question. This has to do with the fractions that I said before. How long does it have to be sitting by itself to absorb and become chanan? 20 seconds? 30 seconds? When does the mixing have to begin? He says, because within 20 seconds it can already become chanan.
That's how soon you stir.
Yes. Nobody says how long. Basically, they said right away. What does right away mean? What if it's after 1 minute, he says?
No.
What if it's after 30 seconds?
Also tough law. Right away, it's right away.
So the Aruch HaShulchan wants to say, interesting chiddush. You know what the words ad hasof means? Ad hasof, till the end, that you no longer see the roshem of the halab ala basar. In other words, the milk has been gone. It's absorbed into the meat.
Enough.
Huh?
Enough.
No. In other words,
The milk is no longer in that piece of meat alone. It's no longer in that piece of
You
meat.
have to be mehadef enough, not taste.
no. What?
Dissipated. Until the milk is
Until the
dissipated.
milk has been dissipated, exactly.
That's the end.
That's the end.
Yeah.
Because then, if it's mitchila v'ad hasof, you don't have a problem.
Because now the milk is no longer exclusively in that one piece of be able to affect it in relation.
Yes, exactly. That's what he wants to say. Interesting, no? You don't recognize any milk on it. Okay, that was that. So what does he mean? So as long as you still have, no, but you didn't understand fully what he meant. As long as you still have the roshem of milk on the meat, you can still mix. That he adds that point too. In other words, as long as you can still see the milk, it's not completely isolated in a sense. That means it's not completely absorbed yet. You can still mix. Once you don't see it anymore, then it's too late.
So if you
It's
haven't
this
started mixing
Yeah.
and it's no longer visible, it means that the whole milk went now into pieces.
Yes.
And since you did this piece never got a chance to emit and share it with other pieces.
The other piece, yeah.
And therefore you can't be mitzvah for everything in the pot into 68. And therefore if that piece by itself doesn't have 6,
Right. I may not have explained it right, but that's what he meant. That Vanta. In other words, that Kozman, as long as it's not gone, you're still able to mix. Once it's gone, it's too late. Anyway, what about the other question? The gabe this that you need shishin keneged the tipa. If you did not mix it, it did not cover. Why should you need shishin keneged the chalav? So he says even though we don't have a concern. Usually,
you mean
when
the
something.
The Ramah?
No, the Aruch HaShulchan right now is explaining the mechaber. Why would you need shishim keneged the tipa if the rest of the pot is not involved at all? Right? Because the mechaber says if you have shishim keneged the whole thing, why would you have to have shishim if you're talking about a piece of meat that's outside?
Oh, well,
Keneged the tipas acholov.
How would it help?
Keneged the tipas acholov. So he says like this: if we're talking about the shitas, like the shitas that hold that cholov has a little bit of shamnunis, it has a little bit of fat, and you're talking about a piece of meat here, as opposed to another case later on in Taaruvot, where there's no liquid at all. Here, being in a pot, even though the liquid is not underneath you, it's all the way in the bottom, but you have steam. So he says the circumstances here are very different than anywhere else, where you may have pure tzli. Here you don't have a pure tzli because you have steam. Plus, the svara that says that chalav is a little bit of fat. So because of that, it spreads. And because of that, you have to consider everything against the tipas chalav. We're concerned about that.
I'm curious how you would hold this.
Yes. No, yeah, we'll see. I'll point it out next time. I just wanted to give more of an overview because there's so much going on over here. It's a little difficult to follow. And as far as the chatichas,
Steam and you said one of them?
fatty, and it's fat and it's milk. Because of these two conditions, the milk is fatty liquid, plus you have steam. The combination of the two means that I'm now concerned about the rest of the contents of the pot as well. And as far as the chaticha kula being a surah, even if it's mechutz l'roiter, this goes basically like the Rashba that holds that there's a little bit of fattiness here, and even though this fattiness according to the Rashba is not so fatty as to affect other pieces, because he holds cholav is kochush in relationship to other things, nevertheless for this piece alone, the milk is fatty enough to affect that piece. Since it's an ekdera with the steam, same thing. So in other words, what he's saying is that even though this piece of meat may be outside the pot, it's again the combination of the fattiness in the piece of in the meat, in the milk, and the steam that affects that piece more than an ordinary. Had it not been fatty, had there not been any steam, it would just be a dover gush, solid piece of hot meat. It would be a real tzli, and it would be just a kedei.
But the chalav is not gush. The chalav is
Right,
not
not
solid.
right. Yeah.
The chalav you can't see.
Right.
And the chalav is not an...
Yeah, but that's as far as it would go. When it's not bishul, it would only go kedei natila. Not necessarily the way everybody holds, but that's the way the Tur holds.
It's a shame. We can't
Yeah,
have the Shulchan
right.
here. The Torah, the Shulchan.
Yeah, the Aruch HaShulchan. Yeah, that he's the one that explains this. But we will see that it's not only him; it's quite a few others who hold it pretty much the same thing. That in order to explain this mechaber, you either say it this way, or you say that it's halfways inside. That's where it becomes a little bit more of a question. What is the mechaber really telling us over here? If it's completely outside, then according to the Tur, it's only kedei natila. So you can say like the Aruch HaShulchan says, based on the Rash B'Sfora, it's a little fatty, steam. That's where the whole chaticha is also. That's what we're concerned about the contents. But you don't have to say that. You can say the other pshat. No, the whole thing becomes also regardless. Or we're talking about that it's halfway inside. If it's halfway inside the liquid, then of course I can understand the dynamics there is different than everything else I'm concerned. Plus the chaticha itself is already in liquid itself. You see how this machlokes of Rashi and places that we will discuss later on can make a difference over here too.
Does anyone hold
Yeah.
that if I have a pea meat
Yeah,
sitting in a pot without anything
The Tur. There are.
Let me ask you a question. Without anything else.
Right.
And a drop of milk falls on the meat.
Yes.
I don't need sick against the drop of milk in it?
No, you
Anyone
need
hold
kedei
it?
natila. I just showed you. Look at the Shach in Tzadik Aleph, where he explains that chiluk. Yeah, and in Taaruvot too. Right? Sif Cotton Hay in the Shach. So anyway, that's why it makes a difference. Ultimately, in this first part of Sif Aleph, it makes a difference when the mixing or if any mixing happened. Right? The second part of the Seif will deal with when we don't know to which piece of meat it fell, then what do? That will be an interesting proposition where you can actually go ahead and mix it now. Huh?
Is that totally, if you don't know?
If you don't know which it fell, but you don't know which piece of meat it fell, that will be it's an interesting halacha. It's one of the few halachas where you're allowed to be mevatel in a sense, the isur lechatchila, in a sense. Go ahead and mix it now.
But isn't there...
You don't know where it fell.
Provided I have in pot 60 against the largest piece, provided in the pot, everything together is 60 against the meat in the pot. Otherwise, we'll have a piece in the pot.
No, against the milk. This is mechaber. The Ramah doesn't hold that. The Ramah says we don't go by this halacha that you go ahead and mix it.
Why the milk? The piece...
No, this is the
so
second.
I need 60 pieces of meat.
No, but we don't know. We don't know which piece of meat.
I know, but
Yeah.
so it could be the largest one. Since I don't know which piece of meat, worst case scenario would be it might be the largest one. So now I have a large piece of there. That's hagan. So then I need in the rest of the pot 60 against that piece.
No. You only need in that second part of the seed, which we'll cover next time, Mitzvah Hashem. All you need is a kafela again to taste if there's a tam chalav. Otherwise, Otherwise, you're meshar b'shishim. Yeah, but we'll talk about it then. Why that is possible according to the mechaber. In quoting the words of the Rambam. The Rambam says no, we don't follow that. But that is that's an interesting proposition. That even shishim, you don't mix. The Rambam says you don't do that. Right. But we'll talk about it next time, Mitzvah Hashem. Okay, we'll stop over here.